Hymn number 853, 853. Listen. Sing the wondrous love of Jesus, sing his mercy and his praise. In the mansions bright and blessed, he'll prepare us above. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout heavenly. While we walk the pilgrim pathway, clouds will overspread the sky. But when traveling days are over, not a shadow of sun. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout heavenly. Let us then be true and faithful, trusting, serving every day. Just one glimpse of him in glory will the total repay. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout victory. And number 878. 878. Let's sing. There's a land that is fairer than day, and by faith we can see it afar. For the Father reigns over the way, to prepare us a dwelling place there, in the sweet by and by, we shall be on that beautiful shore. In the sweet by and by, we shall be on that beautiful shore. We shall sing on that beautiful shore the melodious songs of the blessed, and our spirits shall sorrow no more. Not a sigh for the blessing of rest, in the sweet by and by, we shall meet on that beautiful shore. In the sweet by and by, we shall meet on that beautiful shore. To our bountiful Father above, we will offer our tribute of praise for the glorious gift of his love, and the blessings that follow our days. In the sweet by and by, we shall meet on that beautiful shore. In the sweet hymn number 464. 464.
I guess I don't have to slide it back. You move on. So this is the last 3 chapters of Job's discourse. His 3 friends have nothing more to say. They haven't said anything. For the previous 3 chapters he started, and he has 3 more before we get to the young man Elihu. I think that's where you said that. I may be wrong. But it is an interesting thing when we look at Job, especially in these last parts. He is no longer even arguing with his friends, so to speak. He is just basically saying how he feels and some things which he would desire. And I think any of us, in a lot of what we read here, if we were in Job's shoes, would feel virtually the same way. And so it's very easy for us to understand. I think that's one of the reasons we have so much of this, because especially if we've been striving to be faithful as Job had done and everything that happened, there is always why. If I've been trying to do what's right, why? And so, and even if we understand that bad things happen to even good people, sometimes our point is, oh, what I wish I still had. And that's where Job was going here. Starting in verse 29, or chapter 29, verse 1, Job further continued his discourse and said, "Oh, that I were as in months past, as in the days when God watched over me, when his lamp shone upon my head, and when by his light I walked through darkness, just as I was in the days of my prime, when the friendly counsel of God was over my tent, when the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were around me, when my steps were bathed with cream, and the rock poured out rivers of oil for me."
He's looking back, all he had. Now it was going good. Oh, if I could just have some of that again.
And who is he giving credit for all that he had?
God.
So you got to give him that. He's at least saying these were all blessings from God. What's his tiny little mistake now? Huh?
I'll just repeat,
Oh, well, when God watched over me, when God protected me.
Oh, he's pretending as if that's all over with.
Yeah, when the friendly, back then it's like, yes, I was receiving these blessings from God, but he's also like, well, I'm not getting anything from God. God's left me.
Yeah.
He kind of gets that feeling. He's kind of that point. How hard is it to get that feeling?
Easy.
It's easy. It's easy. When trouble start coming, what's the first thing people say? Where are you at now, God? That's what Job's kind of doing. Where are you at now, God? He's not really directing it that way, but he's just saying, back then things were so good because God was with me. And I wish I could have just a little bit of that right now. He goes on. When I went out to the gate by the city, when I took my seat in the open square, the young men saw me and hid, and the aged arose and stood. The princes refrained from talking and put their hand on their mouth. The voice of nobles was hushed. Their tongue stuck to the roof of their mouth. When the ear heard, then it blessed me. And when the eye saw, then it approved me. So before we get into why, what was the Job saying?
At one time he was respected. He was looked up to. He was a man of honor among his peers. All them things.
All them things. And here's the interesting part. What about his three friends? How have they treated him?
With honor.
With honor in this time. At that time. And that's my point. At that time, and it's kind of reminding them, you once even respected me. You once even hushed your mouth around me. Who do you go to when you need advice?
Somebody that has a handle on the advice you're seeking. Someone who's clearly done it.
But somebody you see and respect as being able to help you in that. Somebody, as Joey put it, somebody that's been through it, somebody that knows what they're talking about.
Mastered it,
maybe mastered it. Who do you not go to? The one that you see struggling right now. You don't go to him for advice because, it's kind of like you want financial advice, who do you go to? Somebody that knows what they're doing with finances. You don't go out over here to the guy that's struggling to take care of his house and can't even figure out how to keep his job. You go to the wise people. Why? Let's throw this a little bit. Do you go to the elderly or do you go to the young?
Elderly.
Why?
Well, she has the experience. She's been through it. As a young person, I say that was one of my mistakes. I tended to take advice from my peers who knew as little about it as I did. You go to those who have walked the walk.
There we go. We may have knowledge as young, but we do not have the wisdom to apply it. It's not a knock toward the young, it's a realization. And guess what? When do you figure that out? When you're young? No. I was just like Joey. I remember a bunch of us standing around a bunch of maps in the 9th grade. We thought we could solve the world's problems with just a few stupid ideas. What we would have done was created it worse. That's what we do when we're young. We have that inexperience. We think we know a lot. But these young men knew of Job so well that they said, you know what, we're going to hush. We're not going to open up to Job because Job knows what to say. The old men, the wiser men, the elders saw Job and said, we're going to be quiet. Job, he has wisdom. And here's the reason why. Notice what he said, because I've delivered the poor who cried out, the fatherless, and the one who had no helper. The blessing of a perishing man came upon me, and I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. I put on righteousness, and it clothed me. My justice was like a robe and a turban. I was eyes to the blind, and I was feet to the lame. I was a father to the poor, and I searched out the case that I did not know. I broke the fangs of the wicked and plucked the victims from its teeth. Job was a helper of men. When you go back to the first chapter, how wealthy was Job? Extremely. Probably one of the wealthiest people of his time. And what did he do with that wealth?
Well, here he helped those around him needy.
He helped them with it.
No doubt that's what God was talking about when he told the devil, have you checked my servant Job?
There you go. Have you looked at him? Do you see everything that he does? It's not just that he holds integrity and will not sin. Look at what he's doing, how righteous he is.
And God has seen all that.
Now here's the other deal. Jesus made the statement that it was easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. And his apostle said, who then can be saved? And Jesus said, with men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. People have tried to turn that around, that the eye of the needle was speaking about a certain gate where the camels had to kneel down and can barely fit through and everything. But notice what Jesus said, with men this is impossible. So he's not talking about a physical thing. He's literally talking about an eye of the needle. With men, it is impossible to put a camel through the eye of the needle. We have a hard time putting a thread in the eye of the needle. God said it's possible. Here's the proof with God it's possible. Job was a righteous man. He was doing everything that God expected a wealthy man to do with his wealth. Not just give it all away, but to help those who were in need. Then I said, I shall die in my nest and multiply my days as the sand. My root is spread out to the waters, and the dew lies all right on my branch. My glory is fresh within me, and my bow is renewed in my hand. So at that time when Job was doing that, how did Job think his life was going to go? I am ready for old age to come. I will die here in my home. Everything was taken care of. I don't have any worries. Now, here we go. How do we do it like that? How does that happen to us today? Is that not the same way we can do? We think that life is well, everything's going just right, and then something happens. Calamity strike.
No, I've never been that rich.
Never been that rich. I've never been. I can't say I've ever been where I never had to worry about bills. But do we not get comfortable in our life and thinking that everything is going well and everything's going to be okay? Joey spoke Saturday at Teresa's sister's funeral, made a very good point. 90 days. The woman thought she had a stomach ailment, probably thought she'd be okay in a week or two. 90 days later. Up, walking around, everything's fine. Doing everything she normally did. A week later, she found out she had 90 days. Job, up walking around, making sacrifices for his children, and one day, everything was gone. And then another day, his health was gone. Just when I thought nothing could go wrong, everything went wrong. Notice, men listened to me and waited and kept silence from my counsel. After my words, they did not speak again. My speech settled on them as dew. That definitely did not happen with his three friends, did it? They waited for me as for the rain, and they opened their mouth wide as for the spring rain. If I mocked at them, they did not believe it, and the light of my countenance they did not cast down. I chose to wait for them and sat as chief. So I dwelt as a king in the army, as one who comforts mourners. What Job? I gave people advice, and they followed it.
He does sound a little bit self-righteous in this.
Well, he does.
I know some pretty wealthy people who think they fit that description. They leave some of the parts out, but they help everybody.
Is it
they give
self?
God the credit for it, but they don't worship Him
Well,
in truth.
and there's a lot of men like that, but Job did worship God.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They leave those parts
Job gives the credit to him. I think here, and Job is proclaiming what he did, and that'll get addressed probably next week. But when we come back to that point, come back to this point, is it wrong to sit there? What does Job say? This is what my life was at one time.
He's reflecting.
He's reflecting. It, huh?
It's probably not wrong.
No, and that's all I'm saying. But I don't know that he's proclaiming himself as being self-righteous or that he's proclaiming his righteousness as he was. Is there a difference? What does self-righteous actually mean?
Thinking of himself above what he is, above those around him.
Yeah, I think Job is more saying this is what life was like and how he lived for God, whereas a self-righteous person sees themselves as righteous in their own eyes. We can get like that real easy too. And that's probably a little bit what making it hard on Job too, because I think there is that little bit of point that he thought he was so righteous, even he thought he was so righteous that he would not fall. You understand what I'm saying? I think
Yeah, he had to be asking himself why, because he had that little bit of that same idea that they did. Righteous people, this doesn't happen to righteous people.
Right, and I was righteous, and what he's saying is that right now is I'm longing for those days. I'm longing for the days when people still look at me. And notice here in chapter 30, he turns it around. Now how's his life? But now they mock at me. Men younger than I, whose fathers I disdain to put with the dogs of my flock. Who mocks at him? Men whose fathers he put in their place. Indeed, what profit is the strength of their hands to me? Their vigor has perished. They are gaunt from want and famine, fleeing late to the wilderness, desolate and waste, who pluck mallow by the bushes and boom tree roots for their food. Notice this. Who is mocking at him? Those very wicked people, sons that he rebuked and stopped from doing things to widows and orphans and those wicked people. That's who he's talking about here. And he says how they've ceased, but now what are their sons doing? Oh, look at him. Look how he put daddy in place. Look how he did our father. And now look what happened to him. He's just as bad as he was. Notice, they were driven out from among men. They shouted at them as at a thief. They had to live in clefts of the valleys and caves of the earth and the rocks. Among brushes they prayed, under the nettles they nestled. They were sons of fools, yes, sons of vile men. They were scourged from the land. Who caused them to be scourged? Notice, whose fathers I disdain to put with the dogs of my flock. I brought this upon them because of their unrighteousness. And now I am their taunting song. Yes, I am their byword. What do they see Job? They see Job just as his three friends saw Job. Oh, now, look. His sins have come home to roost. They abhor me, they keep far from me, they do not hesitate to spit in my face. Because he has loosed my bowstring and afflicted me, they have cast off restraint before me. Who's the he? God. He says, because God has brought this upon me. They see no reason. Here comes the reality. How should we feel when we see something happen like that to somebody? What happened to Job?
Yeah, we've got to be really careful that we don't think the same thing that his friends did.
You got to be real careful because Because we don't know. We don't know what's in a man's heart. We don't know why things like this are happening to him. We're not God. We can't see everything. And so before we jump to a conclusion that's saying, well, he's getting his righteous oats, his rightful due. Why? Why do we need to be like that?
It's human nature.
Well, that's why we tend to be like that, but why do we need to be more like we don't want to judge him? We don't want to see that in him.
Sometimes we think we sit in God's place.
Well, that's what we're talking about, is ending up sitting in God's, put ourselves in God's place. Well, what happens if we sit there and go, he deserves everything that happens to him? What's happening to him? What can happen to us? That's why we need to remember. This happened to Job, and when we see people having trials and troubles and tribulations, instead of sitting there going and putting ourselves in judgment, we ought to be having some compassion and seeing where we can help, because it could just as easily be me.
Looking inward, not outward.
Yeah. What does it take for us to realize how much of the golden rule needs to be in our hearts and minds? What did Jesus say? Do unto men as you would have them done unto you. Well, I treat everybody like I like to be treated. What about in those situations?
Yeah, but he's talking about a different group of people here. The down and out.
I'm not talking about these people. I'm talking about Job. These people are treating Job that way.
Right, but Job did treat people that were poor and down and out with compassion and stuff.
And I understand.
He didn't treat.
He didn't treat the wicked. He made the
evil guys. He got rid of it.
Right, he did. Now, what I'm saying is,
now they're laughing at his fault.
There we go. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is not to be one of those people that look and say, look how the mighty has fallen and how just it is, and have understanding compassion, that it doesn't necessarily mean that he sinned or brought this up on himself, but that circumstances of life just happened. Because if I don't have compassion upon him when he falls, who's going to have compassion on me when I fall? And wants to keep me from falling. And that's what I'm talking about in having that part of it. See, let's think about it. Let's think about some people that are here within us in our relationship. Do we really take the time and say, how would I want people to treat me if I was in their shoes? That's the point of that. That's the point I'm trying to make, because a lot of times we go, well, I'm going to treat them like I want to be treated. I treat people the way I want to be treated. I treat with respect. I treat like that. But what in those circumstances? What about when life is just falling apart and going all matter? Do we really take the time to sit there and say, what should I do for them? What could I do for, what would I want somebody to do for me if I was them? Well, that's a personal question. Each one's going to have to answer. But that's my point. That's what we need to be doing. Notice, at the right hand, the rabble arises. They push away my feet, and they raise against me in the ways of destruction. They break up my path. They promote my calamity. They have no helper. They come as broad breakers. Under the ruinous storm, they roll along. Terrors are turned upon me. They pursue my honor as the wind, and my prosperity has passed like a cloud. Saying, everything's gone. Just a moment. Now, my soul is poured out because of my plight. The days of affliction take hold of me. My bones are pierced in me at night, and my gnawing pains take no rest. By great force, my garment is disfigured. It binds me about as the collar of my coat. He has cast me into the mire, and I become like dust and ashes. Job thinking God's just guarded him? Notice how much Job is going through. He gets no rest. His bones hurt. Ever hear anybody say, I hurt right down to the bone? You ever had sinuses so bad that your teeth hurt? Job says, that's my whole body. I cry out to you, but you do not answer me. I stand up and you regard me. But you have become cruel to me. With the strength of your hand, you oppose me. You lift me up to the wind and cause me to ride on it. You spoil my success, for I know that you will bring me to death and to the house appointed for all living. What did he say? I cry out to you, but you do not answer me. Job feels like God doesn't even hear him.
Feels abandoned. But in our dark hours, we've tasted some of that.
That's why it's so important to understand that God's always there. Because it's real easy to say that things are going so bad, there's no way God is with me.
That's a little bit, we've been studying John in 11 in Bible class, but that's a little bit how Martha and Mary felt when they sent to Jesus, the one that you love is ill.
Yeah.
And he didn't come.
You
He died.
You weren't here when we needed you.
If you'd have been here, you would have lived.
Yeah. That's exactly the point. Can we get that way real easy?
When our prayers don't get answered the way we want them to, when we want them to.
Ron's hitting the nail on the head. When our prayers don't get answered the way we want them to, when we want them to. When do we want our prayers answered? Right now. Right now. How do we want them answered? Exactly the way we ask for it. Mary and Martha wanted Jesus to be there. They wanted him to come running.
We get lulled into thinking we know just how God ought to respond. When we really don't have a clue.
And we really
Don't see the big picture.
there we go. We don't see the big picture. We really get our little tunnel vision going, and we get focused, and we put on our blinders, and we can only see this point.
And the scary thing about the end of this story is that he never did tell Job why he did it. He told us.
Yeah, he never did tell Job.
But he never told Job.
So what should we get from that message?
It's God's end of the stick to whittle on.
God's in the stick to whittle on. Some things he's not going to answer.
Yeah.
Some things are. Here comes to realize, why did it happen to Job? We say, well, because the devil provoked God, and God actually used it.
Because Job could handle it.
Because Job can handle it, Ron says. You think there's not more for us to understand than just that Job can handle it?
Apparently, God thought Job could handle it. Like we say.
Well, God knew it. God knew Job could handle it, but
if he'd have put that on me, I don't know how I would react.
Okay, so here's the thing we could do. God, we have that God will not put us any more on us than what we can bear. But how much can we bear?
Only he knows.
There we go. There is the point that God is trying to tell us is life is not fair. I will allow what is put upon you, especially if it will benefit others. Job's story is recorded to benefit us, to show us that no matter what happens, we have to hold on to God. There was a time that I used to sit there and pray and just tell God, how can it get any worse? And you know what I quit praying about?
Yeah.
I quit saying, how can it get any worse? Because every time I prayed that, it got worse. But still, because of Job, and I really didn't have studied Job that much then, I knew that God didn't give up on people. And that people weren't to give up on God. So Job says, eventually I'm going to die. Days of affliction confront me. I go about mourning, but not in the sun. I stand up in the assembly and cry out for help. I am a brother of jackals and a companion of ostriches. I don't know. Jackals is like hyenas. They'll tear at you. The only thing I could apply to ostriches is that they're supposed to be considered some of the dumbest animals in the world. It is said that they literally, when you hear the term pea brain, they have a brain the size of a pea. That's where it came from. So I think he's saying everybody that hangs around me are some of the dumbest people around. My skin grows black and falls from me. My bones burn with fever. My harp is turned to mourning, and my flute to the voice of those who weep. He's feeling really sorry for himself. Surely he would not stretch out his hand against a heap of ruins if they cry out when he destroys it. Have I not wept for him who was in trouble? Has not my soul grieved for the poor? But when I looked for good, evil came to me, and when I waited for light, then came darkness. My heart is turmoil and cannot rest. No, he said, surely he would not stretch his hand against a heap of ruins if they cry out when he destroys it. Yet I've wept. I've wept for those who are in trouble. I've helped the poor. But now what's happening to me? God, you're just laying more and more upon me. I have made a covenant with my eyes. Why then should I look upon a young woman? For what is the allotment of God from above and the inheritance of the Almighty from on high? Is it not destruction for the wicked and disaster for the workers of iniquity? Does he not see my ways and count all my steps? Job is saying, do I not know that God watches everyone? Notice what he goes on to say. If I walk with falsehood, or my foot has hastened to deceit, let it be weighed on honest scales, that God may know my integrity. If my step has turned from the way, or my heart walked after my eyes, or if any spot adheres to my hands, then let me sow and another eat. Yes, let my harvest be rooted out. If I deserve this, let it happen. A covenant with my eye. If my heart has been enticed by a woman, or if I have lurked at my neighbor's door, then let my wife grind for another, and let others bow down over her. For that would be wickedness. Yes, it would be iniquity deserving of judgment. The wickedness that he's talking about is him being enticed for a woman, or lurking at his neighbor's door wanting his wife, or being with his wife. He said, so if my wife was taken from me and given to another, or others bow down to her, I would deserve that because of the wickedness done. For that would be a fire that consumes to destruction and would root out all my increase. It's deserving. If I despise the cause of my male or female servant when they complain against me, what then shall I do when God rises up? When he punishes, how shall I answer him? Did not he who made me in the womb make them? Did not the same one fashion us in the womb? There's one for you to people today. How should I treat other people? What's the difference between me and Ron?
You're better looking than I am.
I was going to say about 6 inches, maybe 10. I don't know about that part. What's the difference between us in reality?
Yeah.
What? Well, I mean, here's the
All
thing.
created different.
Huh?
I said we're all created different.
We got difference, but when we get into the eyes of God, what makes me any better than anyone else?
Yeah, James said, with our tongue we praise God and curse men who were made in the image of God.
There we go.
That shouldn't be.
How much today is there still a hard time sometimes accepting people of other race or other color? How much does it happen in the church? And it's not one-sided sometimes. I was talking to a couple of brethren at the lectureship who are of a different race, and there were people that were complaining that they were going to work in primarily Caucasian churches. Their answer was a soul is a soul and God doesn't see color. It's true.
It's true with God.
It's true with God, and that's the way it ought to be with men. I can tell you right now, one of my dearest sisters in Christ, who has encouraged me for the last 20 plus years, is not a white woman.
The early church probably struggled with that with the Jews and the Gentiles.
Yeah, and it's not just about races. We see it in color. It's races between cultures and people, and it ought not be. And you're right. The early church did struggle that between the Jews and the Gentiles. That's why you had the Judaizers able to do what they did. And it ought not have been so. Because here comes back. Paul points it out in Acts chapter 17. He made us all from how many different blood? One blood. Marshall Keeble used to say, you may not be my brother in Christ, but you're my brother in Adam. Well, guess what? We don't even have to go all the way back to Adam. We all came from Noah. So why do we treat people different? Job says it's wrong. Job asked that question. Would it be just? If I've kept the poor from their desire or caused the eyes of the widow to fail, or eat my morsel by myself so that the fatherless could not eat. If I was like that rich man that Jesus talked about in torment, who Job never knew about, but from my youth I reared him as a father, and from my mother's womb I guided the widow. If I have seen anyone perish for lack of clothing, or any poor man without covering, if his heart was not blessed, has not blessed me, and if he has not warmed with the fleece of my sheep, if I have raised my hand against the fatherless when I saw I had help in the gate, then let my arm fall from my shoulder, let my arm be torn from the socket. For destruction from God is a terror to me, and because of his magnificence, I cannot endure. Job says, I haven't done these things, but if I did, then let justice be served. If I have made gold my hope, or said, fine gold, you are my confidence. If I have rejoiced because my wealth was great, and because my hand had gained much. If I have observed the sun when it shines, or the moon moving in brightness, so that my heart has been secretly enticed, and my mouth has kissed my hand. This also would be an iniquity deserving of judgment, for I would have denied God who is above. If I exalted myself up as God, I felt I did all this on my own, I deserve judgment. If I have rejoiced at the destruction of him who hated me, or lifted myself up when evil found him, indeed, I have not allowed my mouth to sin by asking for a curse on his soul. Job is proclaiming, he's saying, if I did this, but here's what I did. If the men of my tent have not said, who is there that has not been satisfied with his meat? But no sojourner had to lodge in the street, for I have opened my doors to the traveler. If I have covered my transgressions as Adam by hiding my iniquity in my bosom, because I feared the great multitude and dreaded the contempt of families, so that I kept silence and did not go out of the door, or that I had one to hear me, here is my mark. Oh, that the Almighty would answer me, that my prosecutor had written a book. Lay out the charges, Lord. Surely I would carry it on my shoulder and bind it on me like a crown. I would declare to him the number of my steps. Like a prince, I would approach him. Job is almost saying, I would stand before God proud. That is Job's one error. If my land cries out against me and its furrows weep together, if I had eaten its fruit without number or caused its owners to lose their lives, then let thistles grow instead of wheat and weeds instead of barley.
This is a good contrast between that and the first chapters that we read in 26.
Yeah.
The difference between self-righteousness and righteousness as far as God's concerned.
To a degree.
Yeah.
Job still kind of holding that point is that I've been righteous. I've been righteous in God's eyes. That's what he's pointing out here.
Yeah.
But he's still pronouncing his own righteousness. It's in God's eyes. What he's questioning by pointing all these things out is God just in allowing this to happen to me? We get in the next chapter, that young man's going to point some things out to Job, and he's going to start pointing out some things in the next several chapters. And he's one of the things he's going to throw at Job is because he has not proclaimed God's righteousness. Okay? Instead of his own. And here it says the words of Job. Job will not speak again until he's addressed by God. And that's where we're going to stop this evening. It's a thing that we have to realize, and Job hasn't thought about. He says, I'm ready to go in judgment before God. How many are looking forward to the judgment day? We're all looking forward to going home, but how many of us really want to stand in front of God and go, God, look how righteous I am? No. We all understand it's going to be, thank you, Lord, for your grace. As Joey said in his prayer, we at best are unprofitable servants. At our best, we're not deserving of anything. It's like that point that people want to get in an argument about works. Here comes a reality. If God, which he has, through his grace, given his son upon the cross to have permission for our sins, and he asks us to do anything, how are we righteous if we reject what he's asked to do? A work is simply obeying God. It's something that God asked us to do. And if we reject that, how do we have any hope? If God has asked us to love our neighbor, how hard is that? If God has said, help those who are less fortunate, when you have the opportunity, should we not do that? Should we not have compassion on one another? Is that working for salvation? No. That's just doing what God has asked. Being baptized into Christ, is that a work? No, it's an action befitting what God has asked me to do. And yet many times we're spoken of in the New Testament of our works following us. Jesus himself said that there will be a day when God rewards each one according to his works. Not seeking meritorious salvation, but looking to the grace of God in appreciation. Let us stand and sing.
God sent his son, they called him Jesus. He came to love, heal and forgive. He lived and died to buy my pardon. An empty grave is there to prove my Savior lives. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he owns the future, and life is worth the living just because he lives. How sweet to hold a newborn baby and feel the pride and joy he gives. But greater still, the calm assurance, this shall give thanks in certain days, because he lives. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he owns the future, and life is worth the living just because he lives. And then one day I'll cross that river, I'll fight life's final war with pain. And then as death gives way to victory, I'll see the lights of glory, and I'll know he lives. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he owns the future, and life is worth the living just because he will you lead us in closing prayer?
Dear right, Father, we thank you